All right, we're going to talk LSU baseball in this segment, and I want to start off asking you about the pressure that LSU baseball feels, and if it's greater, in your opinion, this year than most because of what other athletic programs at the university are doing. Football, number one team in the country. Men's and women's track right now, number one teams in the country. Basketball, Sweet 16 run. Even volleyball is the number one team in the country. Softball is a top 10 team or right there on the edge in the country. Does that add to it, or is it just, hey, it's LSU baseball, there's always going to be that pressure?
I think it's the second one. I think it's always pressure. I mean, I don't think that the 97 team in baseball felt like, they didn't really have to live up to any standard because LSU's football team wasn't any good.
They were at the Indy Bowl that year, if I'm not mistaken.
96. I mean, I'm talking about the 96 season entering in where it was DiNardo was, doing some decent stuff, but the 90s had been sleepy, and, I still don't think that took the pressure off anybody. Like, I think when you take the field for LSU baseball, this fan base expects excellence, and that's regardless of what the football team does.
I'll open it up pretty blunt here. Does this team have excellence in them?
I don't think so. I think they're going to win some. I think they're going to win more games than they're getting credit for in the fan base right now because the pitching's so good. But there's a talent problem in the lineup, and I don't know that it's fixable. There are just going to be holes that cannot be plugged by this roster. I think it can get better, and I think there are some really good hitters at the top, but there's a talent problem in the lineup, and I don't think it's going to get much better.
You were there in Houston this weekend. If they closed the Baylor game out, if they didn't lose that game, they won 2 of 3, but still got no hit on Sunday, would that change your mind at all?
I'd feel better, yeah, which brings up a great point. But I think I don't care that they didn't get a hit in the game on Sunday. I mean, it was pathetic because that guy was a nice pitcher. But it's not just you got no hit, you must be terrible. It's the fact that I can look at the schedule and I can go, okay, well, on Sunday against Indiana, you scored 2. And against Nichols on a midweek, you scored 2. And on Friday against Eastern Kentucky, you scored 0. And then Sunday against Oklahoma, you scored 0. And it continues to happen where they go games without putting anything together offensively. And it's because the top 4 guys can hit, and the bottom 5, no matter who they've put out there, have been wildly inconsistent. It doesn't matter if it's – and this is uncomfortable for me to an extent, and I think that it makes people roll their eyes. But I don't feel a need to come on here and call out players individually and say this guy can't play, this kid can't hit. But what I'm telling you is there are 4 guys that are swinging the bat, and then the rest of the offensive roster has not proven that they can hit at this level. That goes for freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Haven't proven it. Doesn't mean the freshmen can't get better. Doesn't mean they won't have good careers. But it means to this point, no one else has proven that they're an SEC stud, for lack of a better term. I'm not even talking about serviceable average. It just hasn't happened.
So what do you do? What do you do with the lineup when you're so top heavy and the bottom is not giving you anything? And not anything as far as hits and RBIs and home runs. Really, the at-bats have not been quality. There's been a lot of, and Haney talked about it on his show in Linked yesterday, how many 3-pitch and 4-pitch strikeouts LSU had. Of the 34, I believe it was 15 was the stat that he used. That's atrocious. I mean, that's something that it literally can't happen. It literally cannot happen for you to be successful if the guys in front of you, those top 4 that you're talking about, if they get on base, if they hit a double, and you can't have a productive at-bat to at least move them over and advance them 1 base, you can't score runs.
Here's what you do. You go to practice, and you try to get better. But it's either showing that these guys are not ready to hit or they can't. And that runs the gamut from any individual player that you want to point to. They're either not ready or they can't. And eventually you find out, and you just go with the best guys. And that's not going to stop Cole Henry from going out there on Fridays and throwing the ball great. And that's not going to stop every time you get a lead. The first time in any weekend you get a lead through 6 innings, 44 is coming in.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to slam that door. And so, they've got a chance to win in a lot of games. But right now, it's so deeply flawed, and it's not even a good defensive team at this point.
And we've talked about that in length.
Yeah.
I mean, the opening day lineup made you, I think, more nervous than I've ever seen you before.
Yeah. And then now that whole thing's been scrapped because half the guys who were starting at a spot on that night aren't even in there.
If you're a starting pitcher on this team and you've had the success that they've had to this point, my worry is that they start trying to do too much and they try to overcompensate for not getting 3 and 4 or 5, 6 runs every time they go out there. And then it gets them off their game, which LSU cannot have happen.
No, and that's a good point, and that's a real factor. I mean, I'm remembering a specific instance when Aaron Nola and Jonathan Gray faced each other. It was in about the 4th inning or so. They hit, if I remember the guy's name, his name was Oberste, hit a double to lead off the inning off Nola. And then they bunted him to third, and he had 1 out. And you're looking at Jonathan Gray, who's throwing 97, just snapping off sliders, and LSU was waving, had no chance. And Aaron knew at that point, like, that guy can't score. Yeah. Now, Aaron rose to the occasion. He got the strikeout. He got out of the inning, and he ended up throwing a complete game shutout that night. And there has to be a little bit of that, of bearing down and making your pitches, but you can't try to be so fine and so perfect that you overthrow or are afraid to throw strikes because you're trying to hit the corner, try to strike everybody out. You can't do that, but you do have to realize when you're out there that you can't lose your focus at any point, because if you get in some trouble and you give up a 4-run inning, you got problems, especially with your bats against – because this is the other part of this. This is the worst pitching they're going to face all year. What they've seen, not this past weekend necessarily, but the weekends when you scored 0 on Indiana, and when you got shut out on Friday night. I mean, I've realized that that's kind of a junk ball and deal that doesn't really apply to everything, as you got a lefty throwing 65 miles an hour, and you don't ever really see that. But it's like, do you see the arms that you're about to be staring down all spring? Like, it doesn't get any easier.
I mean, we've talked with Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, Eric Sorensen from D1 Baseball. They talk about these Friday night arms in the SEC being some of the best in the last decade in the SEC. And we all know what that kind of statement means. I mean, we can go down a list of teams and guys, but we've done it. Exactly. And you're opening up SEC play with a team that preseason-wise didn't get a lot of love as far as SEC teams. Now you look up the number 9 in the country, Ole Miss Rebels, and you're going on the road.
And so, look, I think I've said this twice, and I want to reiterate it because I get just blasted all the time on Twitter and all over everywhere about how I'm an area apologist, and I'll never say anything negative. And look, I backed Maneri when they were national seeds 5-6 years in a row, because that's, to me, the job of the LSU baseball coach, is to field a team that enters the NCAA tournament with advantages of playing at their home park and that everyone thinks has a chance. And if you go and have a bad weekend, I don't blame that on the head baseball coach. I just don't. I think what LSU tried to do against Alabama in the national championship game, you can go straight to the coaching staff. I don't think you can do that in baseball. I think it's a different thing. So that's why I continuously backed him. The last few years, when I look out on that field, it doesn't look like that anymore. And that's on the coach. So I think that right now, when I look at the lineup, I think there's a possibility, if we have what just happened in the fall on the football field and everything goes right, meaning all your pitchers stay healthy and you have this dominant staff, and then you get somebody healthy that can come in and help you on the infield, and a couple of the younger guys that have struggled early catch up and have Mikey Matuk type deal, have Austin Nola type deal, where they kind of become a force as a freshman and can help at the bottom of the lineup, because the top 4 guys can swing it. And I'm including Zach Mathis in that. I know he didn't have a great weekend over the weekend, but watch the kid swing the bat. Yeah. I watched him all fall against these LSU pitchers swing the bat. He's going to be fine. He's not going to be a first-team All-American, but he's fine up there, and so are some of the other guys. So you've got an opportunity for it to get better, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it to me.